and we'll go ahead and get started. So thank you everyone for watching this video. Today I am here with Chris C. from Servus Credit Union. And Chris is going to talk to us about his marketing strategy on his credit union social media page, as well as just share some general insights around marketing in general, so all of us can kind of learn from that. Also, we would love for you guys to check out Servus Credit Union's Instagram page. Chris, I'm going to pass it over to you and just share your Instagram handle with everyone and allow you the opportunity to introduce yourself. So without any further ado, take it away.
Absolutely. Thanks, Nicole. So yeah, my name is Chris C. I'm a part of the content strategy team here at Servus Credit Union. So Servus Credit Union we've been around in Alberta, Canada since 1938. We have about over 100 branches in Alberta with 380,000 members. So primarily focused in sort of this region. On our Instagram account, you're probably going to see it's called @ServusAlberta, but we have about 3,700 followers, 3,900, and it's consistently growing about, a pace of 50 to 60 on a monthly basis. So we're seeing sort of a really big acceleration over the last little while. And primarily it's because over the last, I think maybe 6 months or so, we've been really focused on what we think about it as a visual identity and also as sort of a pillar called the emotion of money. And we know that money is a touchy subject for everyone, right? I mean, it's relationships, it's defining what we see as success, but also when someone is going on a social media account, especially for a financial institution, we typically ask ourselves, why? Why would someone follow you on an account like this? And really for us, it's been primarily focused on this concept of, the vulnerabilities, right? When someone's looking for some financial education or they're looking at some community work that our organization might be doing, right? So it's really thinking about the pillars of what we're doing, but then also connecting with people in sort of the channels that they exist in, right? So I think that's kind of the number one takeaway that we found is being really successful. It's having content that is attainable by many people, that isn't too heady, too far over, but also having sort of different subject matter experts talk about the same content over and over again, right? So we integrate in some of the podcast work that we've done previously, some of the work that we see from our marketing team, sort of talking about some of the campaigns that align with the sort of financial literature, and then also some of the communications work that we do. So really, my job as a content strategist with the specificity in social media is to both define what globally our content platforms look like, and then also a bit of air traffic control, right? Because there's so many people that are involved in these platforms.
Excellent. Wow, that was a great summary of what you're doing there at the credit union. It sounds really, really great. You sound very organized, very analytical, but it sounds like you have a good balance of creative and analytics happening at the same time. So very well done. You touched on something that I think is a question that we're all kind of asking ourselves. Why would anyone follow a financial institution? What would bring them to your Instagram or Facebook page? I mean, I know personally, I don't follow the financial institutions that I bank with or that handles my finances, but it's interesting that you said that because I think that touches on a really important point. Why are they coming to a credit union or a bank? Why is someone going to your Instagram page? And you just nailed it. It's because they have a question. They have some sort of insecurity about what's happening in their life. Or, the flip side of that, something great happened and they need some maybe investing advice or some saving advice. So it's really important to I say this basically in every credit union or bank that I've spoken to, that you're going back to basics essentially. You're thinking about the human behind the consumer, the human who's actually visiting your social media page and thinking about what's going to resonate with them. And what you just said is perfection. It's, the pillars of life essentially. And it's, they're coming to us for a reason. And then from there, it's developing those reasons into strategy. So that was so great what you just said. So as a content strategist, I'm so intrigued by this position. So I know we're going a little bit off course here, but why don't you tell me a little bit about, what you do as a content strategist and what a typical day looks like for you? And the reason why I'm asking this is because a lot of marketing teams within financial institutions don't necessarily have the ability to have a strategist, a content strategist on hand. So just talk to us about what you do and what a typical day looks like for you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm not just a content strategist of one. We have three people on our team right now that are all content strategists with different specificities. We have a web-based strategist. We also have an email-based strategist. But we've been working on this for quite some time. I mean, content strategy has sort of been eating, sleeping, breathing, and evolving, over the last 5 years, I'd say, at Servus. So everything from, initially 5 years ago, it both sounds like a long time ago, but then also a very short period of time ago, blogs were sort of on the in thing, right? So we were thinking about SEO focused with blogs and driving people to the website. Now the way social and sort of these platforms have arguably fractioned, right? We're seeing people consume on separate platforms, right? So, they may be on Instagram as sort of a search platform. So they're really looking at reels and sort of flipping through that. They might be on TikTok, right? So there's a whole search platform based on TikTok that we sort of think and strategize around. So as a content strategist focused on social media, what I'm doing is a lot of day-to-day research. These platforms have changed dynamically over the span of like a week. I'm pretty sure I'm bugging my boss constantly with articles linking here and there about sort of minute changes, but also significant changes over the last little while in these platforms, right? So I think sort of conceptually around how we develop and segment some of our audience, and then how do we talk to them on individual channels. So for us, we know that a large proportion of our Instagram account does sort of focus in those urban type of areas, right? So how do we reach an urban audience with a diverse cast of people? How do we sort of formulate the content to look specific like this? And then what we then do is sort of go out and source subject matter experts, whether that be some of our influencer or content type of people, or they're subject matter experts internally that can sort of speak towards either specific products or lines of businesses and relationships that we can sort of do there, right? So when we think about all of that, we want to then tie that back into a lot of our marketing strategies and campaigns that are running forward. So we don't think about social channels, and more specifically Instagram, as sort of this one operational channel. We want to tie it back and our organic and paid channels back into what we see as being sort of these marketing objectives, right? So we have objectives. It's not just about sort of reach, not just about sort of followership. For us, it is about sort of how we can drive maybe an engagement, and then B, sort of how do we take them down through this user journey into some type of conversion, right? I think a lot of different platforms that we see, especially on Instagram, what we see now is sort of these features that are available on Instagram, right? So we see vertical video as sort of being a huge thing. We also see the grid kind of coming in and out of importance. We see, YouTube Shorts as sort of another link in. And then, thinking specifically about Instagram, our Instagram stories as being a great way of driving clicks to a specific call to action, right? So thinking about that as a content strategist of how do we leverage, these three sub features on a massive platform that has, a couple of billion people, but in our case in Alberta, maybe tens of thousands of people on these platforms. And how do we then sort of reach that audience in a specific way, and tying in, again, all those campaign-based work that we're doing.
Right. That's excellent. Now, it's interesting because sometimes what we see is that engagement can mean different things, right? So engagement can mean, and you spoke about this, I'm just going to reiterate what you said, likes, follows, shares, reaching an audience, that's important for engagement, right? But I think what you said is the end goal is conversion. How do you get those customers or those members to come into the bank or credit union and actually sign on for a product or service that you guys are offering? So it's very targeted marketing. It's very specific, and that is all done through exactly knowing where your audience is, knowing where they're looking. It's so interesting you said that, because me personally, I'm not on TikTok, right? But I will definitely go through my Instagram reels, and I will check off all those stories that were once on TikTok or just have been on TikTok for the past week. So, and that's just me. I am not a millennial. I won't give my age out, but I am not a millennial. So I'm in a different generation. However, if you're trying to target a millennial or even younger, it's important to know, like, they are on TikTok. They are the ones that are going through there on those stories or those reels and those videos, and they are the ones that are making the videos themselves. So for you to infiltrate those channels is important just as much as it's, important to have those reels on Instagram. And Facebook, in my opinion, has almost become another website. It's like your website version 0.2 basically, because everybody's on Facebook. So it's important to make sure that you have that social media presence. And I think that just helps continue to gain credibility within the credit union and have you guys be seen as the go-to, as the gurus for all those products and services that you're trying to get those members and customers to come in and sign up for with you guys. So that was great. That was so well said. And really that targeted marketing focus and knowing where your audience is so key and so important. So thank you for sharing that. I feel like you've touched on so many things that I wanted to speak with you about today. But, I think in general, you kind of spoke about your content marketing strategy, but maybe just if you could focus specifically on one aspect of it. And I'm not going to choose for you because you are a wealth of information about so many things, as I think we can all say. But if you could just pick one of those areas that, you could just speak to your content marketing strategy in general and just kind of share some pointers or maybe even some successful campaigns that you've run with the audience. I think just listening to you speak, we've all been really interested in hearing, what else you've done at the credit union that has worked.
Yeah, the biggest campaigns that we run on our channels and as a credit union has been Service Big Share. So catch this one, Nicole. We give away $1 million every single year to one member, and whether or not that's $500 entry or what we call profit share. So we give millions of dollars back to our membership every year, but specifically to this one person. And it happens around January, February, March. Unfortunately, for everyone that's listening, it's only for an Alberta-based audience. So
I was just going to say, is this for US?
Yeah.
This isn't open to the US, is it? It's only Canada.
No,
okay.
Unfortunately not. But one of the reasons why I bring this up is, we've been doing this for about 5 years or so, playing back and forth of how we function in a 4-month period worth of time where, a lot of dollars in marketing is spent on increasing awareness, both in TV, out of home, social media, like campaign-based platforms, and then of course, on our organic channels, right? So one of the things that we've tried to do over the last little while is really segment our audience and ensure that on a channel like Instagram, they may be seeing a placement, an ad placement multiple times, right? So how do we differentiate what our Instagram account looks like from the rest of sort of the campaign itself, right? So that we're not sort of just constantly talking to people over and over again. We're not getting sort of the wild sort of killer button for any social media strategist, which is the hide button, or I don't want to see this anymore. And then it just sort of starts this wild chain of disengagement from the platforms. So for us, what we've done is during these times, we've thought more conceptually again about why people follow us on these channels. And it might be through sort of that top line level of the campaign itself. They see it through, Service Big Share, we get a follow or we get a drive there. But again, what we're thinking about how we want to engage with them is through vertical video. It's through sort of that humanization of the brand itself. So it is thinking about how do we front load, 4 months worth of production into sort of this point where, around the November, December time, we're then developing enough content to deploy maybe 2-3 times a week worth of content there that's just focused on, everything for us in Canada around that time. So it's tax period. So we got to think about RSPs. We got to think about sort of taxation. We got to think about sort of other things like that. To the other side of things, again, why do people follow us? Well, it's a bit of our community engagement. We spend a lot of dollars in building relationships in each one of our 100+ communities. So how do we reflect that as an entire social media platform? It's to have that nice mix in between, right? So we have our vertical video or our sort of enhanced financial literature on these platforms. We do a bit of mention back and forth about Service Big Share, when there's some timely points to have that discussion, and we sort of weave in and out that way, right? So that's the air traffic control part of being sort of that social media strategist, to look at something and say, which channel do I want to distribute this message to? How do I want to talk to that audience? How do I align that with the campaign? And then sometimes, how do I move away from the campaign in order to sort of give people that visual break back and forth, right? So that's certainly one of the biggest achievements we've done over the last 5 years. It's the organization gives back a lot of money when it comes to sort of our shareholders, our members, our employees. So we just want to reflect some of the work that we're doing, of course, and then some of the campaign work to drive more audience to those platforms.
That's awesome. I'm still, you had me at $1 million. So I think I'm still kind of trying to process that and digest it, to be honest with you. Wow, what a way to be able to get some attention towards the credit union. That's remarkable. I don't think I've ever heard of that much money being given away. And if you're a bank or a credit union listening to this, feel free to prove me wrong. I would love to hear if someone else has been giving away $1 million to one person. Am I right? One
Yeah,
person,
yeah.
$1 million.
And
That's
I mean, totally. And Nicole, imagine this. We give, I think last year was somewhere close to 54 million total in profit share. So, what we see as being sort of the core tenet of Service Credit Union is the ability to give back to our membership when we see times of success, and even when we don't, we know that money back, that membership, that shareholder, that, profit shares, as we call it, is the core, is something that's so vitally important to us to ensure that we are seeing that return and that our members are engaged, that our members know that when they vote for a board, that when they do all these things that happen, that we portray on or post on our social media channels, they're also seeing sort of that profit go right back in their pockets. So they're not, blaming it on sort of the big five and a corporate speak that they're not getting some type of return off of a financial institution. So yeah.
That's amazing. What a great way to be able to give back to the community, and certainly within even smaller community banks and credit unions, like they exist for the community. And a lot of times, even though it's finances, even though it's banking, we can lose sight of like that bigger picture. That okay, why are we here? Why do we exist? We exist for our members, we exist for our customers, and giving back is so important. I have a question for you, and it's kind of a basic question. So when you're creating content, right, for your reels for Instagram, what sort of videos are you guys creating? Is it videos of your members coming in? Is it videos of your employees helping members when they come in? Is it just community events? Is it a mix? Number one, my first question is, what types of videos are you creating? And number two, what are the ones that get the best success rate in terms of conversion, if you even have that information available?
Yeah. So I'll maybe waffle back and forth between that two-part question. So number one, we know that the best reach that we get on any post is something that involves our strongest advocates, which are our employees. Right. So whether or not that's a subject matter expert talking about, an investment strategy in specific, or that is video of, our employees out in the community. I know we do two big runs that we sponsor, two marathons that we sponsor, the Edmonton and Calgary Marathon. So those are certainly things that we can sort of portray the brand live, people running around. There's brightly colored Service Credit Union shirts. There's our employees running after people with like cheer signs and stuff. So it really kind of gets innovative that way. But, I think for us, it's that media mix of everything, right? So what we try and do when we capture content is we think about it as a content hierarchy. What can I capture as sort of the highest value content? Generally, that's video. That's usually someone that's talking through a particular subject. But what we can then do is tier that down into, things like static content, like an image or a carousel or an infographic, and then sort of into a blog or other things that are there, right? So we think about it as sort of developing the highest tier content first, the most effortful content. Over the last 5 years, I've been chasing people all around Alberta with a video camera, doing interviews, sort of those types of fly-by nights where we spend about like 20 minutes in one city, capture an interview, do all those things, cut it down into something that's about 20 to 30 seconds long, and then sort of fly over to the next city or the next town, sort of do another interview and stuff. So we've varied content from being sort of the, people doing things to sort of that static. And I think that's really sort of the best advice for people. It's that, you might want to stick to one methodology, one sort of thing, which is like maybe phone captures or whatever else. But that evolves so quickly that you want to make sure that you're sort of taking that and developing it out into other things, right? So really thinking about that evergreen content as being sort of something that you can take, repurpose later on, and then sort of create other assets out of it. And then you're not really sort of running around as much trying to sort of capture content and recapture and then redo things over and over again, right?
I love it. So you're just basically taking some real life people, you're mixing it in with other types of videos as well. And it sounds like everything here is just all about balance. And it's important to not just pigeonhole yourself into one type of content, if I'm understanding what you're saying, and to just kind of try different avenues and to use different types of content, because that's how you're reaching different audiences and actually keeping their attention as well, right? So I think that's so spot on. Is it hard to find people who are comfortable going on camera?
Yes and no.
Okay.
I think the biggest thing with many people is I have a background in media, so it's a lot easier for me to sort of do an interview with them, prep them, and sort of put them in a way that where the interview itself or the content that we're trying to capture is far more conversational. So it all happens in the beauty of editing after that, right? But what we've done with many of our subject matter experts is we've kind of brought some of them through sort of a few tiers of coaching and then sort of some of the work that we've done. And then all of a sudden, after maybe 5 or 6 times, this becomes a lot more natural with them. And then you can sort of throw them a couple of key messages and they can talk around it, right? But the key in my mind is, I'm not the expert in the financial fields. They are. I'm a person that thinks about content placement. My job is to make sure that their voice, their expertise resounds across all of the channels that we're thinking about and that they're reflected in the best way possible. Of course, service by that very effect is also reflected in the best way possible. But
Yeah.
if we're able to do that, that really ensures that they're seeing that level of care happen. By that very effect, most of our employees are people
Yeah.
type of people, right? So, if we can sort of put them in a good situation where they don't feel like they're sort of caught off guard or there's no sort of weird questions that kind of come out of left field, usually we have them also participate in multiple drafts as we start going through. So they have that level of comfort. They're not just like, oh, you're just going to throw something out there with my name on it. So there's, of course, maybe the certain percentage of people that are really good on camera that can, give me 5 minutes, I'll kind of talk towards a specific subject. And then there's other people that might need a bit more coaching. And then there's other people, of course, that aren't necessarily there, right? So our job when it comes to sort of social media is to ensure that we're, encouraging people that might be sort of video curious or social media curious to then sort of jump into it full steam and say, hey, that's not that hard to do.
Right.
I can both do that on social channels like services channels, and then of course on my own channels and see if I can't increase my reach that way too.
That's great. That is so great. I love that. And you know what? What better way than to make people, especially your employees, into local celebrities? I mean, that's essentially what they become when you post pictures about them. And it's just, it makes the credit union obviously that much more, it puts them in the limelight, basically, is what I'm trying to say. And makes you guys kind of this entity that people want to go to, that they want to see what's going on the inside. So that's excellent. Okay, final question, because I feel like we could probably sit here and talk all day about your excellent content marketing strategy. But Chris, if you could give one piece of advice to bank and credit union marketers, what would that piece of advice be?
Yeah, think about any organization or any sort of financial institution as both heart and smarts, right? I think on our end, our heart part is our community engagement, right? It's the value pillar that we look at. That it's the relationships that we have with our membership. It's that care part that we look at, right? The smarts part is the financial literature, all of those other type of things. So if we can have that fine balance in between the heart and smarts on our channels, I think that really draws people into this notion around, like, again, why follow a channel? Why follow a financial institution? And then maybe as sort of a byproduct to that, like, be really analytical, right? I think a lot of times with that heart and smart type of focus, we think about sort of constantly reflecting, community values or using our channels as sort of a way of reporting that out. But we want to really look at sort of what those numbers are dictating on the back end of those channels and seeing how we can drive more towards, that equilibrium, right? And seeing that growth. So be really analytical with what we're posting, but then also really sort of understand what people are coming to us for and how we can sort of leverage both of those opportunities, right?
Hearts and smarts. I mean, I think you just summarized marketing so eloquently. That was so well said. I don't think I've ever heard anything so well put in such a short phrase in my life. So very well said, Chris. I love it. Hearts and smarts. I'm taking that with me. I might go tell my kids about that later. Like, go through life, hearts and smarts. Like, be a good person, but also use your head. Like,
yeah. Well, I can't take credit
transcend.
for that. Yeah, I unfortunately can't take credit for that. I know my VP Don Norris in marketing is sort of that hearts and smarts type of person. So I give him props because he's definitely drilled that into my brain over the last 5 years.
Well done, Servus marketing team. I mean, I think you guys are definitely, ones to watch in terms of the social world of social media. Everyone give them a follow, give them a like on Instagram. I think it's very, very educational for us all to follow, support, and like each other, just to kind of, keep in contact, stay fresh, stay relevant, see what everybody else is doing. And, the world of social media just got a whole lot smaller because we can all just kind of peek in on everybody else. So why not help each other? Why not share knowledge? We are all consumers. We are all consuming media, so we can all learn from each other. Chris, to say that this has been educational would be an understatement. So I just want to thank you truly for sharing your expertise, your knowledge, for speaking so eloquently to your content marketing strategy, and just for taking the time to share what is working well for you guys, what you've learned throughout your marketing journey at Servus Credit Union and in your experience as well. So thank you so much, and we greatly appreciate your time, and we look forward to more great things to see on your social media.
Absolutely. Thanks. Happy to contribute.